Resources Review Board. Do you have a statement that you read or not? Do you read that?
I don't think I have a statement that, to read at this time.
Okay.
You mean like the one that you read earlier?
Yeah. We don't have to read that anymore. Okay.
No one's directed me to, so we could skip that
Okay.
for this meeting.
I don't have one. So. Okay, so our agenda, first item of our agenda is our new board member. Blair Niding, do we have a formal swearing in or just a welcoming? And Blair, your credentials are most impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Really.
I appreciate that.
And sure we all look forward to having you join the board, and thank you for your volunteering.
Appreciate it.
Let's see. The next item is public comment. This is for anyone that wishes to speak on items other than what is on the agenda. There's an opportunity for each agenda item for public input. Is there anyone who wants to speak on any item other than on the agenda? Looks like there's not. So,
raising my hand. This is Ed. Just wanted to thank you all for serving on the Cultural Resources Review Board. As y'all know, faster than a speeding dump truck, what we know and love about St. Johns County is being destroyed, and I firmly hope that y'all help us, as William F. Buckley Jr. would say, stand athwart and in front of progress, which is not destroying our history. But thank you for all you do, and thank you for letting me attend by phone.
Okay, real good, thank you. So we're going to go to, next item is a staff update on the grants survey of A1A, and that's the survey that was contracted for about, well, the grant was approved about a year ago, and it's, Trey, did you want to proceed to update us on that?
Yes, so the survey has been pretty much completed. It's being reviewed, its final version is being reviewed by the Division of Historic Resources, and so that grant is wrapping up right now. We do have this final draft version to present to you, if you'd be so curious to take a look. So this was done by GIA Consultants, and it has an interesting history section talking about the development of Villano Beach and Ponte Vedra, and in total 321 structures were surveyed. That includes new surveys as well as updated surveys to the Florida master site file. So this should be finalized in the next couple of weeks or so. Just to scroll down really quickly here to give you an example of one of the properties surveyed, at least one of them. Let's just scroll down here. So you can see here's 176 Villano Road. It describes the location of the resource, its architectural style, and determines if it's significant enough to be listed in a historic district or individually eligible for the National Register. Only one structure was determined to be eligible for the National Register in this survey, and that was the Nice Park site, Alan D. Nice's house located on Villano. And here's that house here. Are there any questions or comments?
They haven't noted the Sinclair Lewis house?
They did not.
Oh. Now, what about some of the original beach cottages, a few which are left from the 1920s, 1930s?
They did note some of those, and they believe that those are eligible for a historic district of some kind, but not individually eligible for designation.
Okay.
hmm
Nothing from the 50s of merit?
There was many structures from the post-war era that were documented as part of this survey. Ranch-style houses that kind of predominantly dot that landscape, as well as some larger structures like the Ponte Vedra Beach Club.
Is the draft available for this board or others to look at now or not?
I think that we're going to have the final version in the next 2 weeks or so, if you wouldn't mind waiting until then.
Okay.
But I don't think we would have an issue of sharing this version with you right now, if you do so desire.
Okay. I guess in addition to all of us in this room, I don't see anyone, or maybe they are, from the Volano Main Street program. There's been great interest in that from that group.
Yeah,
I know they'll be very interested in seeing it also.
yeah, I'm surprised that Sally O'Hara
Yeah.
isn't here. She's usually pretty reliable when it comes to attending these meetings, but I'll reach out to her and
Questions anyone has about the study at this point?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised also that some of the ones on the main strip there weren't and are
Yeah.
eligible. Like the old Brancato building and a
Yeah.
couple of others. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what they say.
And of course, if you believe that there is significance to these structures that is not recognized in the report, we can, if the board so chooses, designate those structures without,
Locally.
locally.
Yeah, okay.
There's a historic landing site in this length also, but I guess there's nothing physical left from that.
Yeah, this just pertains to historic structures and not
Okay.
archaeological sites or
Okay.
landscapes.
Okay, and that was an information item, so any public comment, anyone with questions or comments on, we have a comment here.
I got a question. I'm not sure if it's the program, interpretation program. Well, my name is Thomas Jackson, 917 Chippewa, the interpretation program, is it strictly related to the North A1A, or is it going to do anything on South A1A towards Crescent Beach?
Now, this survey was limited to Ponte Vedra and Villano. At another time, maybe, we can apply for another grant which would allow us to have the cultural resources along Crescent Beach assessed.
Okay, Ms. O'Hara, we are about ready to move on from the update from Trey on the survey of A1A Volano. And Trey is available, but we've just learned that the draft report is completed. The final report will be available in a few weeks. And there's been one property that's been singled out as likely eligible for individual listing.
Excellent, okay.
Do you have any
Which property
questions?
is that?
The Nice House.
Yes, that is an excellent property.
Okay. Next item 3.
We do need to discuss the interpretation program in regards to the new signs that have been installed throughout the county. We've had over
Okay.
like around 30 markers and historic panels installed throughout the county, highlighting important historic sites. I'm going to bring up some pictures here to show you what has been done. So this is a new panel that was installed discussing the history of Palm Valley here. So mostly these signs kind of highlight the social history of historic sites.
Some of those signs have blown over already.
I don't know why they keep going off to the side like that. So you can see the panel here installed at Alan Denise Park, talking about the history of the construction of the house and his being the first county forester hired by the state of Florida back in the 1940s. And kudos to Ryan here. He was the one who designed these signs, choosing the color for the background and finding these wonderful pictures to complement the text. And I would also like to show you an example of the markers that have been installed. So here's the one located at Alpine Grove. You see it has that kind of dark green background to it, like the markers that we're used to seeing from like the 1960s and 1970s. And it was even designed with this arch up top to resemble those historical markers even more. So these signs, these markers, these panels are going to allow visitors and locals to St. Johns County better understand our history and appreciate it. So, are there any questions or comments?
Is this content posted on a website somewhere with a map of where these markers are?
No, they are not. Would you like to?
Do you think they should be?
How many were installed in total?
About 30.
It's not that big of a
No,
I
that'd be
think,
good.
I think that would be good to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, they look very nice.
Excellent idea.
Oh, sorry. Okay, any public comment on the signage? Any questions? Okay, so we're,
Oh, just wanted to say good work and thank you.
yes, okay. Item 3, then we move on to 5480 Atlantic View Mitigation Plan. This is the property that we had a considerable discussion on at the last meeting. And so is there a staff update on this?
Yes, I do have an update on this property. So we have two groups who have formed a coalition together, CORD and the Memorial for Martin Luther King Committee. And they've come together in the hopes of raising funds to pay for the relocation of that significant structure. And Parks and Rec has accepted the idea of the structure being relocated to one of their parks, preferably Windswept Acres.
Which is the one near there?
It's the closest park to it. And you may see that there are maps that have been provided, and the blue dot at the western back portion of the property is the preferred location for the structure to go. And that way it doesn't disrupt the park atmosphere, the openness of the park. Now, Parks and Rec is looking into whether administration will approve the funds needed to restore the structure and hook it up to technological systems, including electric.
So when you refer to that, is that, what are the possible sources of funds for the project?
So the coalition here is going to try and raise money for the moving of the house, but all other costs will be covered by the county, including its restoration, its maintenance, and its interpretation.
Okay. I'm wondering, National Endowment for the Humanities, is that a possibility also, NEH, federal, to match the county money? Or what you all raised?
Well, we're definitely looking into all the possibilities. You know, we thought about initially a GoFundMe account, which we can be the repository of the funds that come into, since we are both 501c3. I want to introduce folks who are here with me. My name is Thomas Jackson. I'm the chairman of the Dr. Martin Luther King Celebration Committee of St. Johns County. And with me is one of my members, James Wesley. He's also the chairman of the Dr. Martin Luther King Committee in Orange Park. Correct. And also Elizabeth Duncan, she's the chairperson of the 40th Accord. And her member is David Nolan. I'm sure you know David. He's been around a number of years. And between the two of our groups, we wanted to kind of come together and save the house and interpret it and help for the long range interpretation of it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to find out if there was going to be an interpretation program in A1A, on A1A. Now, I'm not sure, I know there's a 3-minute limit on the presentation, and I know we can all say 3 minutes if we like, but I'm just speaking from the total group perspective. We would like to be able to save the property and take it from where it is now to wherever the county say it would be best suited, and then help with interpretation going forward after that. And then, of course, the cost of unconnecting, moving, we would try to raise those funds. And once it gets in the place where it's going to be located, the county would look up and maintain it going forward. Hopefully there'll be maybe some help from the county to move it, but I'm not sure about that.
Have you been in communication with the owner of the property, the owners that were?
Yes, Liz, you want to speak on that? Okay, well, I know Ms. Duncan McQuinn. Yeah, she's been in communication with the owners. I've been in communication with the Paul Weaver, who did the mitigation plan, and he's been in communication with the owners. And they want to save the property. They want to help. I think the cost of demolition, they're going to contribute to the cost of moving. So, I mean, to the cost of moving it. So they are in support of moving it if, got to that point.
Are they flexible with their time frame that they, I know they're now needing to build a new structure on the property, right? Are they
Right,
flexible with their time frame for the?
I don't think they're flexible. My understanding is it needs to be done by the end of January.
Ooh, okay.
And we're going to give it best try we can and see how far we can get. And hopefully, like I said, we can get some help. I know the county has moved structures in the past. And in fact, I remember they moved a structure from on the corner of Holmes Boulevard and King Street. There was arches. They moved those arches from one side of the street to the other. And those arches were, I think during the 20s or 30s. And the movers were able to keep them together and move them intact across the street in the park, across, Carter Blocker Purdy Park. So, I mean, there's been some experience, and from the county perspective, and moving structures of that sort.
Yeah, is this a slab on grade
Yes.
building? So there'd need to be, yeah.
Well, I've got an estimate from LaRue and Greenco of about $150,000. Disconnect, move, and then that's it.
I believe part of the building slab on grade, the rear addition, but the rest is a continuous foundation.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you all were here for the last meeting, but I think the sense of this board is that it would be really preferable to do what you're contemplating rather than trying to take pieces of the building and put them in a totally different context.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. I'm not sure. I noticed there's no action required by the board at this meeting. But at the last meeting, was there a designation made of it being a significant cultural resource, or no?
There was not.
Is that something that can be done, and a recommendation be made to the Board of County Commissioners that they support this effort?
I think it would be preferable if a designation was given after it's been relocated. The board can recommend to the county commission in favor of funds being allocated for its restoration and maintenance. The board, if they do so wish, could designate the structure, but I don't think that it would do any good at this time. It is a significant cultural resource, even though it's not been formally designated, which is, why we're here discussing the saving of the building.
So Trey,
Yes.
in our advisory capacity, we could pass a resolution. Could we pass a resolution encouraging or even recommending the saving of the entire structure? I think that was a sense of, based on the discussion amongst the board last time, and that means moving it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is there would that be something that we could do? In our advisory capacity, we're not declaring it
Yes.
since it's in motion, we're not declaring it an actual site yet in the county.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can advise to the county commission that funds be allocated to restore the building and
Because
save.
of its importance.
Because of
historic
its importance, even though it's not been
Okay.
designated,
Okay.
it obviously has
Okay.
significant
Okay.
importance.
So that's a possible action if anyone wants to introduce that.
One other thing I wanted to mention is that this particular marker is at the site and at the building. And the text of this was written
Yes.
by Mr. Nolan. And I don't know if you want to mention anything about the text, Mark, David. That is actually at the site itself.
I want to say that this is part of the Freedom Trail, and the Freedom Trail grew out of the demolition of civil rights landmarks in St. Augustine, specifically the Monson Motel and the Ponce de Leon Motor Lodge. And every time we went to a hearing on that, the architect for the other side would say, no historic significance. No historic significance. So we said, if we can put historic markers on them, maybe at least he'll have to think of something new to say. And so this was one of the first places. This marker has been up there over 10 years, and there's kind of a heartrending tale on it. The place was put back together after it was shot up and firebombed by the Wellborns, a couple from Gainesville who moved down here, and Mrs. Wellborn worked at the hospital, and Mr. Wellborn had businesses on St. George Street. Mrs. Wellborn was 93 years old, and on her deathbed, And it was that terrible year for the economy when the economy had collapsed and we were late in getting our funding for that marker. And as she was dying, she told her daughter, let them put that marker there. So I always think of that every time I go by it. And, you know, I don't want to eliminate time, but my all-time unfavorite promotional gimmick for St. Johns County was 43 miles of beaches and the rest is history. And the implication of that was that our beaches had no history, but they do. In Anastasia Island, you have two clusters of the oldest beach houses in Florida, at Lighthouse Park and at Summerhaven. And in the middle, you have Butler Beach, one of the historic black beaches from the age of segregation. And in terms of individual buildings, you have Marjorie Rawlings' home. Today is Marjorie Rawlings' 126th birthday. It's being celebrated at Cross Creek. And her guests were Zora Neale Hurston, Ernest Hemingway, Dylan Thomas, Robert Frost, and others. And then, most important of all of them, if you ask me, is the Martin Luther King Beach House. You know, if ever there is a case where a picture is worth 1,000 words, the photograph of Dr. King pointing to that bullet hole, which has been reprinted around the world, is it. And for us to lose that, you know, I watched on TV the testimony before the Planning and Building Committee, whatever it is, and they quoted one of the county officials as saying, it can't be historic, because if it was historic, it would be within the city limits of St. Augustine. So we all have an educational job to do. But the easiest way to destroy your heritage is to take the most important place and demolish it first. And after you do that, you know, that happened in St. Augustine in 1950. They tore down Henry Flagler's mansion, Kirkside. And after that was torn down, you know, do you go to them and say, hey, here's Joe Smith's house? They say, hey, no, we tore down Flagler's house. We can tear down anything. And that kind of launched the bulldozers through the city for the next 20 years. So, you know, I'm preaching to the choir here, I can just tell. And I'm glad you brought up the Sinclair Lewis house. You know, we need to really reach out beyond the tourist trap area and save these places for the future, because sure as shooting, the future is going to look back on us and say, why weren't they smart enough to save that?
Yeah, one guy was telling me, he said that a lot of people come to St. Augustine to see history, and more of them will come and know more about Dr. Martin Luther King than they would about Pedro Menendez de Avilés. Even though I was born and raised here, I know all about Pedro Menendez de Avilés, but Dr. Martin Luther King brings a lot of visitors here. And for people to come to St. Augustine and then be able to go on the island and see the building, and of course enjoy the beaches while they're here. But then, you know, and we'll help interpret that building. Because I know the night that Dr. King was supposed to stay at that house, he ended up staying at Janie Price's house. So, and Janie Price has a marker at her house too. But those two is connected, you know, Lincolnville and the beaches. So anyway, I'm kind of preaching to the choir with this.
Okay, well,
So one distinction, you were very clear in saying that we will suggest that they reestablish the house, but not move the house. Is that correct, Trey?
Correct.
Okay, let's make that clear here.
So,
Because you've set up a foundation, you know, collaboration there to raise some money to move it.
Yes.
So we will help you relocate it, just so you're aware of it. Okay? So it's clear for everybody.
Okay, does that mean the recommendation from this board would be that you assist us in the move? Or the insistence, or once it's moved?
So the recommendation we could make is to reestablish the house after it's moved.
Okay.
Am I correct in that?
well, the moving is part of its preservation, right?
Okay, so then let's be clear how we word it. That's all I'm bringing up.
Well, you want to suggest some wording?
Yeah, I
Can I interject just
Sure.
quickly? I'm Jamie Bukhari with the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm the Assistant Director. Just so you guys know, the county has not allocated dollars towards this. So as Parks and Recreation, we fully understand and would love to preserve the house when it gets moved. We have discussed and we found a location that is viable, where it could go windswept acres. But to do that, there is a significant amount of dollars that would need to be allocated to this project, which has not been done. We have briefed administration, so we have spoken to them about the ask, and that we have been able to designate an area where it could be located if funding could be made. but the Board of County Commissioners has not budgeted or approved the acceptance, the relocation, and the funding to preserve this, just so that the board is aware of where we're at with this.
Okay.
So it still would need to, under my understanding, get to the Board of County Commissioners so that the ask could be made that if it can be relocated, the county would accept the house with the understanding that a location has been designated, and that funding be allocated to assist with putting the house on the parcel designated by the Parks and Rec Department. I just want everyone to know there are not dollars allocated, so even if funding is raised to relocate it, there is a substantial amount of work that would need to be done at Windswept Acres where the house would be moved to that is not currently funded.
Okay.
Okay? Because that may change how your recommendation to the board and how you move forward. I just want to make sure that was very clear.
Okay.
So then I would make a motion to recommend that we ask the county to review, study, and eventually allocate funds for the relocation of the property at 5480 Atlantic View.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded, and you can put some language to this, I mean, to put it into a.
Yeah, I'll put some formal language to it.
Okay, and can you send that out to the board for final, any other comments, and then it can go, if this motion passes?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll write up a letter, and I'll send it to the board for your thoughts and comments, and we can edit it as the board sees fit before it's passed along to the commission.
Okay, good. Well, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of proceeding along the lines of Nick's language?
Public comment?
Motion carried.
Public comment?
Yes, we can, we have public comments after every action, it looks like, so.
This is Ed Slavin. I support the motion. I just want to kvel, Kvell, about David Nolan and Chairman Jackson and all the work they've done on this and other structures. I was very impressed with the work of the contextualization committee. And we moved here on November 5th of 1999 and did not even know as tourists or new residents that Dr. King was even here until David Nolan had his articles in the St. Augustine Record in 2002. But the only reason I wanted to make a comment is just to refer the staff and the board to the law that the Senate just passed and that the House is going to pass, the Inflation Reduction Act, Section 40001 on page 586. I was just reading it last night. And it has some funding in there, 3.6 billion with a B. And it's called Section 40001, Investing in Coastal Communities and Climate Resilience. And the pertinent part says, to enable coastal communities to prepare for extreme storms and other changing climate conditions, and for projects that support natural resources that sustain coastal and marine resource-dependent communities. Moving this across the street is an urgent necessity because of ocean level rise and climate change, and I think we get federal funding for it. There's only $3.6 billion, but tell your grant writers to get to work right away.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
thank you, that's a possible other channel. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item?
Quick question. We wanted to get started raising funds, but maybe we should wait until you get a reply back from the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, I was going to ask about a timetable for that response, that recommendation. Trey, I think
How soon do you think we'll get a response back, or will we get one back in a timely enough manner that we can start the process and try to get the funds raised by January, which we're only looking at, what, 5 months, 6 months?
Oh,
I don't know if there's anyone in this room that can answer how soon that would happen. Is there anyone that?
well, Jamie, Ryan, what do you think? What's your experience been?
We can get a letter, written by the end of this week and for review by the board, just so everybody's on the same page.
Was your question about,
My question is, okay, if we go out, we try to raise the money and we keep bringing it, the county says, no, we don't want the building, we can't use it. We have to give the money back to all the people we raised it from. I wanted to know at what point will we get something to say that the county will accept the building and place it on that spot if we can raise the
My
money.
recommendation would be you have another county commissioner meeting coming up. Someone should be attending and having public comment about it, and then they would receive a letter. So they would have, if the letter is out by the end of this week, commissioners would be aware of it, and then someone is there to discuss this or to bring it up in public
When is
comment.
that meeting?
It's next Tuesday, I believe.
and
The next
which,
meeting.
this is,
16th, next Tuesday, I believe.
this is south of District 5, so it'd be, which district is it? Yeah.
I believe it's Waldron.
Waldron District, okay. So your commissioner is Waldron. Okay.
Because it will need to be presented to the
Yeah.
board. Even
Yeah.
a recommendation can be provided, but the formal ask has to be made to the Board of County Commissioners.
And this particular letter won't be the formal ask.
It would not, they're just an advisory board.
So that would be
This
something that
group
we-
would support whoever is putting out the formal ask to the commission.
Okay.
Pretty much saying that you've done your due diligence, you've come to a review board. I would also recommend coming to a rec advisory board meeting. So now you have a cultural review board, you have the recreation advisory board. So the more support you have saying, or presenting that you presented it and some of these volunteer boards agree with preserving it, the better it is for.
Yeah. I don't want to get in, I know we already had a meeting, but I know the rec advisory did discuss this.
Not to my knowledge, it has
So-
not
One of the
been.
members did mention it.
We're going to go on to item 4 if all the discussion's done. Item 4 is 316 North Main Street in Hastings. That is a consideration of designation as a significant cultural resource. This board recently did such a designation for a commercial building almost directly across the street from this in Hastings. We have a,
Thank you.
we have a representative here, and it looks like renovation is underway on 316 now. Impressive.
We've been very busy.
Nice to see the activity on Main Street.
It's exciting, yeah. That one, we had fears that it wasn't going to be salvageable, but we are doing everything we can and keeping as much original as possible. We found some beautiful old wood beams and metal beams in the structure, and some of them have the boundary marks from different boundaries in Palatka. So it's exciting. Every time we get into some other area, we find new pieces that are, just telling the story of its history.
Is there a presentation on this item?
Just wanted to go over what makes it significant. It's very much similar to the other building that Jenna owns. The structure is along Main Street. It's in the brick vernacular style of architecture. It contributes to a sense of place of Hastings development at the turn of the century. Represents economic trends in the county with the industry that used to be there, which caused such prosperity at the turn of the century and resulted in many of these beautiful buildings that there aren't that many left right now. And in terms of the attributes of integrity, its location, design, being in the brick vernacular styles, its brick veneer fabric association with the development of Hastings. So very much in line to why the board designated 301 North Main at the last meeting. Now, this structure also used to be a tractor dealership at one point. Is that correct, Jenna?
Yes,
And it has,
was a tractor depot in, I believe, the 50s and 60s, if I'm not mistaken, and it actually had a music video shot in there that's on YouTube, and you can actually see both that building and Gator Parts across the street. But to me, the coolest part of the building is really the back part, which is older than the front. And that was originally the old newspaper where they did all of the printing. They had the printing presses and the blocks and all of that. It's a metal frame building. That is, part of that is what, unfortunately, the tractor that went through the building and destroyed the back of it, it destroyed part of that, but the main part of the metal structure we were actually able to save, which is, it's beautiful. It's very reminiscent of the one across the street at 301 with all the metal girders. So
What was the use of the upper floor originally?
originally, I was told it was used for apartments on one half, and then the other half were professional offices.
Oh,
So, and it's actually set up like that. Some of them have bedrooms with a little kitchenette and a bathroom, and then the others just look more like office buildings.
so if you look at the screen right here, you can see some interior shots of the second level of the structure. You see it has some nice millwork here. The original transoms back through this door right here is one of the residential apartments that Jenna is speaking of. So it was really kind of a mixed-use structure. It was commercial and residential. And the rear of the structure used to house the local newspaper in Hastings in the early 1900s. So this structure has some interesting history, as many of the buildings do along Main Street. And you can see where it does have the original doors. There used to be clerestory windows at one point. And one of the interesting features, if I could find a good photo. Sorry for my finger being there. That's why you take double of everything. Don't the doors in the facade like open up in an interesting
Yeah,
way?
so what is super cool about this is when we bought it, we had no idea because there was a wall on either side, but this set of doors here, when you remove the wall next to it, there was actually another set of doors, and all four doors open up in this kind of V pattern, and you can drive a tractor or a car through the building. And they're beautiful. They're original doors, and we're saving both sets, but we had no idea the second set was even there because people have done so many renovations in there over the years and just covered things up. But yes, currently we have won the award for the ugliest building in Hastings. But we are working on changing that to one of the most beautiful. So I know it's an eyesore right now. We had a group of teenagers go by about 6 months ago, and they shot out all the windows, which is why we had to put the ugly boards up. But we have all new windows going in. The second floor is already complete, and we're redoing the first floor probably in the next month or so.
And is there, are you what uses are you anticipating?
So our goal, our vision for Hastings, it's very difficult right now to open up just a single business because there's not enough traffic there to keep them alive. So it's important to get all three buildings done in a similar time frame so we can rent them all out simultaneously. So in the building you designated last time, we are working on turning that into an event venue that will be for both public events. We'd like to open it up to the public for nonprofit events, but we also intend to rent it out for weddings, small concerts. Our hope is to do a lot of makers markets and things like that. And then this building here, our goal is to put a cafe in one side in conjunction with an antique store. And then on the other side, we hope to do a retail venue, perhaps a boutique or something like that. And then the third building, which I think we'll be back in another month to do that one, That one, our hope is to do a coffee shop, ice cream parlor, and then we have a dress boutique that has shown interest in going in there. So I feel like it's important to have a nice mix because we're really going to have to turn this into a destination location in order to drive people from St. Augustine and the local Hastings area to keep them all bouncing off each other to survive. It's tough for a small business like that to make it if there's no traffic, and right now there's no traffic. I mean,
You've got also the new, library community center going in, which is another way to solidify our critical mass of activity.
yes.
And then you have that existing hardware store that maybe your workers are getting their
They
tools
are.
from.
We go through there every day. We have an account with them, and they're wonderful. And excitingly, the gentleman that owns the building that the karate studio is in, that is attached to the blue building, they just redid all the stucco on the face of their building, and they just repainted it, and it was in sad shape. It needed it. So they're excited about the changes and the cleanup, so they've jumped on board. And we've talked to a few other business owners that own properties there, and they're on board with giving their buildings facelifts. So it's the excitement's starting to grow and really catch on.
What's the intent for the upstairs, you think?
So I do have to check with the county on that. Typically, so
I
there's.
guess residential is probably out of the question.
Well, and here's the problem with that. So originally, that building had residential. And when it was run by the town of Hastings, my understanding from what I've been told by Chris Stanton, who was very involved in Hastings, he said that residential was allowed in both the buildings. However, when St. Johns County took it over, the zonings, when they moved the zonings over, they had to find a zoning category, because obviously they didn't have the same zoning categories. And they put it in commercial general, which does not allow for residential upstairs.
Allows one unit.
Use.
1 unit.
It does allow for 1 unit, yes, you're correct. But I think to do more than 1 unit, you'd have to get special permission, I believe. I'm not certain. That's where I kind of have to go into figuring that out. I would love to do a couple of apartments, both at the blue building and at the third building that we'll be back for, simply because there's no apartments in all of Hastings. There's no affordable housing. And to get workers for our businesses that are going to be run on the first floor, it'd be really nice. I don't know how much you know about what we've been through, but when the third building at the end was purchased, we had some very unsavory characters living upstairs, and we had to very creatively get them out. We couldn't go through the standard process because there were no leases in place, and we inherited them with the purchase of the building. So it was not going to be easy to evict them. So we convinced them it was a good idea to leave by basically buying them out and renting a new place for them and giving them money. But they were some of the ones responsible for a lot of the damage around town. They were caught shooting up our building, and it was a tough transition. So a lot of people were not keen on the fact that residential was up there, but I feel confident if we clean it up and make it nice and use it for people that are, going to be working there and invest in the community, it'd be a wonderful opportunity. But that's something that, I don't know all the legalities and the rules and regulations yet. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, ideally we'd like to be able to do some residential and commercial uses upstairs.
You probably go through some variance
That's what I'm
for
assuming.
residential.
Yeah, when we get to
With
that point.
historic precedent, but I'm not a zoning attorney, but we'll help. I mean, I think you're preaching to the choir here, so.
And just following up, this is an action item, so if there's more discussion or questions, now's the time to do it, or we can given the discussion and the information that's already been shared, we can proceed to the action item. Taking action. So if someone wants to propose
Come on, Christine.
Oh, you do it.
Okay, we have a
You're
motion.
the architect, you know the language
We
for
have-
this.
We have a motion to designate 316 North Main Street as a significant cultural resource of St. Johns County. Is there a second?
A second.
Oh, there is a second. Janet's a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that is carried. So that's another communication to action and communication to the Board of, I guess, the Board of County Commissioners. It's a information. The Board of County Commissioners doesn't need to take follow-on action.
Correct.
The actions with this board, and so it's officially designated by
Yes,
this board.
it's officially designated by this board. It's an honorary designation, so it's not going to create any restrictions on the property as like a landmark designation would, and if it was that, then it would need to go to the board, but.
Okay. Well, it's great what you're doing on Main Street at Hastings.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Item 5, the Rogero House.
Yeah, so I just wanted the board's input on this. So the Rogero Terre House was a structure built around 1830 in rural St. Johns County near Tucoy, and it survived the Seminole Wars and was there until about 2011. It was demolished by the owner. Now, in the mid-1990s, the county had acquired the deed to the house, but not the property it was situated on, and there were attempts to move it. However, they were unsuccessful due to the costs involved. After the house was dismantled, the county claimed the remains, and they were put into a cargo container at the St. Johns County Fairgrounds where they are currently. So I was wondering if the board had any ideas on maybe what to do with the limited structural framework that's left from the building now
In a container.
in a shipping container.
So,
Are there plans? Was it documented?
Yes, there are plans. They're right now they're with the St. Augustine Historic Society.
the building is protected from further deterioration being containerized, right?
Currently, there is a hole in the roof of the cargo container, and I have requested that a tarp be put over the cargo container to further prevent it from deteriorating.
Has anyone seen what's inside? How long it's been in there with the hole? For how long?
I was pretty much the first one to see it in 11 years. Because when I came on the job here, I found out about the house and I thought it was a loss, and then I found a document acknowledging that it was somewhere at the St. Johns County Fairgrounds, but it didn't say exactly where. So I went out there, started talking to some of the maintenance people there, and eventually word got up the chain that I was looking for old wood. So then I got a call, well, there's a bunch of old wood in that shipping container, and then there's the final resting place, or the current resting place of the house. Now, I don't believe it is there in its entirety. I mean, like the entire structural framework.
Not the metal roof?
Not the metal roof, maybe 2 floorboards.
I would assume that the structural frame is there, but then there's some examples of the clapboard on the outside and maybe a little bit of the metal roof to kind of try to eventually match it. I will say that seeing what we just went through with 5480, which is intact,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know I know this is just up for discussion. I mean, we really kind of need to think about this because this is going to be a big effort to kind of restore this.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, restoration is going to be very expensive for a structure like this, especially when a great deal of the structure is gone. So perhaps somehow using what remains in to decorate, let's say, the new building that's going to be constructed in Main Street in Hastings, and embellishing one of the rooms there, and have in that room some type of display talking about the history of the county. Some way that the public can visualize it and access it. That may be the more economical route, but I just wanted to bring it up to the board so you could think about this and put your input down.
Unlike many of the situations that come to this board, doesn't seem like there's not the kind of urgency, because except for the hole in the container, because it's not deteriorating anymore. I mean, it's protected from the elements.
It has termites, to be honest with you, and there is water damage from the hole in the
pretty
ceiling.
rough. Yeah.
It does look
Yeah.
pretty rough, but was the oldest house in unincorporated St. Johns County. So it had a significant enough value at some point that I figured it should be brought in front of the board to at least let you be aware of its existence.
And what is on the site where it stood now? What's there?
I believe nothing. I believe that it was taken down because the property owners were concerned about it being a danger to the children that lived on that parcel, because the kids would play in it.
Yeah, I mean, as an architect that does surveys all the time, I would worry about whoever took this last photograph. But, I mean, perhaps something could be done if we know what's in the container. If we have documentation, we could make we could build a Revit model to kind of be able to kind of tour around the house on the exterior as an electronic sort of display. And then use some of the elements, like you said, on something possibly on Main Street somewhere.
Are there is it possible to do an inventory of what's in there? Is there any kind of architectural details, like a corbel or some kind of, maybe an eave or some kind of architectural feature we could use as a display to say, hey, this is more of a vernacular type structure from St. Johns County, and then have like an exhibit, maybe like a small exhibit. I know sometimes at libraries they do like a small exhibit that kind of showcases. I think that helps. And then you actually have a tangible piece of history with like a write-up. That might be something we could do.
Well, what I was hoping is that at the bottom of that pile is a large, rough-hewn, like cypress log that used to support the backbone of the house, essentially. But I haven't really removed anything to be able to figure out what is underneath the pile. I think that at some point it would be a good idea to fumigate everything in the cargo container, remove everything, and then assess it there and see what we have. The issue is that if we go to the effort to remove it from that environment, do we really want to put it back in that environment? But it's something to think about.
The cypress wouldn't be attacked by the termites, would it? They don't eat.
They don't eat that, yeah.
Well, it's interesting whether this is primarily an architectural issue or archaeological.
Good question.
It certainly is tangible remains of a past civilization.
Right. Although it's not in context in a shipping container.
No context.
I think you've misnamed it. I think it's the Rogero Trier House.
Oh,
which is
okay.
an old Menorcan family that are still around. So it's not Tyre, it should be Trier.
Oh,
Trio.
Is it
Yeah.
T-R-I-A-Y?
Yeah.
so it's tied
Triay.
to the
Trier,
Menorcan
yeah.
history.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So any public comment on this? Okay.
I'm sorry, where'd you say it was? Out near Tacole? Is that what you said?
out near Tucoy originally.
Okay,
Now it's at the
right.
St. Johns County Fairgrounds in a
Right,
shipping
right.
container.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Oh, I was just going to suggest on public comment that you might want to just have the county commission stick a line item in the budget, and I'll talk to Chairman Dean about that and some of the other items, and at least buy another shipping container and protect whatever's in there now from dry rot or further degradation. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, there could be new container and tented, if the tented for the termites.
Do you fumigate first in the old container and then transfer to the
Yes.
old, new container, and we can see what's in there?
Mhm. That's what I would believe would
Yeah,
be
I think
the good
that would
first
be
step,
good.
fumigation
Yes.
before removal.
And I would I'd make myself available to look at what's in there at some point,
Yeah,
whenever
me
we
too.
want to schedule it.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
maybe salvage some details if anything's there. Kind of assess the damage too. That'd be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, maybe if that could be further explored, and we could hear more about it at our next meeting.
Sounds like a field trip.
Yeah,
The issue with the board gathering together is that it would constitute as a meeting even off-site, and then we would have to make a declaration that it's a public meeting.
So I'll visit it between 1 and 1:30, and between 1:30 and 2
Yeah.
o'clock.
Visit it, report back.
I could do that. We could do that.
Yeah.
I could just be myself.
Yeah, it's just one
and
person.
Someone from
Ray or
There-
whatever.
staff, yeah.
There is a hole in the side of the container too, where one could peek one's head and see the remains of the Rogero Trier house.
I got a feeling Nick would want more than that.
Yeah, I think, let's see if we could, fumigate, and then we can investigate as a second step, see if there's anything salvageable and relocatable to a newer container.
Good, thanks
That sound
for
good?
volunteering. Yeah, that's great.
Not a problem.
Okay, so that's that item. Is there any other business that anyone has for our meeting today? Board member reports, other board member reports? Anything else?
Yes, there is something else. So we were wondering if, for future meetings, if you would like to meet at 1:30 as opposed to 3:30. And we were also wondering if you would like to meet quarterly instead of every other month.
Well, let's see. I don't know how others feel, but I think every other month seems good. We always seem to have something, and if someone's making a request, like we had 2 people that had items that they wanted to bring forward, going quarterly makes it less immediate available. So-
Okay.
As far as the time, maybe we could talk about a little earlier in case it, I think that we end up closing the building up, which we don't want to do, which is fine. And maybe if 1:30 is not available for everybody, maybe 2:30, if that would be an hour earlier, that would be good too. Is everyone,
I mean, I'm open for any time. I just need to get it on my calendar. So if it's
Yeah,
1:30 or
same here.
3:30, I'll
I'm
just
okay
put it on my
anytime.
calendar,
Yeah.
block it out.
Anytime.
same with me too.
Okay.
Although
First Monday of
I do
every
like
month.
it a little bit later.
Yeah, the first month.
First month.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that we're meeting at like the second Monday instead of the first Monday in this case is because there was another meeting that was going on. Was it planning and zoning?
Yeah.
We didn't want, we wanted, didn't want.
Okay. Do we want to keep the first Monday of every other month, though? Is that,
Or is that required?
It would be the second Monday.
so we want
Oh,
to
so
change
we're
it to the
moving.
second Monday?
Yes.
At this point?
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Well, that's important to know.
Yes.
And we do have a list of dates that we can read off now and also copy you on those list of dates. So
Yeah, if you could distribute those also, or whatever, so that is a change. So the discussion is to meet earlier, 2:30, 2:30.
Or 3? Is that
You
half
prefer
an hour?
3?
No,
No, I think
2:30 is fine.
What's the
2:30.
request? Okay.
The second
1:30.
Monday.
Why are you requesting? Because it usually goes late?
It usually goes late,
Our
past
building
5.
is closed at 4:30, so we're actually
Yeah.
after hours now. We went out of line.
Okay,
I'm
so,
okay with either 1:30 or 2:30. It doesn't, I mean, I think it needs to
I'm
become
okay with it.
earlier so we don't close
Yeah.
the building up.
yeah, I'm okay with either.
But then do distribute those dates so we
Yeah.
can,
Get them on our calendar.
second Tuesday of every other,
Second Monday.
of every other month.
So will this be put on the website or notify the public?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, it'll be sent out in an advertisement to the paper.
Okay, any other business? No other business? We're adjourned.
So when would that go into effect? Would it go into October?
It would go into October.
Okay, so the 2nd October. Got it. Yeah, okay.
And Ed's gone.